Rick Esenberg with Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty is standing by to talk about the first, not likely the only, but the first, well, perhaps it could be the only, lawsuit against the Biden administration's alcohol, tobacco, and firearms rule that reclassifies what could be up to 40 million gun owners as illegally in possession of short-barreled rifles. Welcome to the program. It's good to have you on the show. I'm very proud and pleased that it's a Wisconsin group that has gone first on this. It is an exceptional case. I believe you can read the brief at will-law.org. Rick, this one looks like a no-brainer. This looks like a slam dunk case. But let's talk about what the Biden administration did, how it affects people, and ultimately how you got involved in this.
Well, what the ATF did is it promulgated a rule that says that if you put a pistol stock or a pistol brace on a pistol, something that I was surprised to learn 43 million Americans have, that this converts the pistol into a short-barreled rifle, and it either must be destroyed or you must apply for a particular type of registration. And the problem, other than the Second Amendment one, which is real and shouldn't be discarded, is that Congress never authorized the ATF to do this. And so this is just the Biden administration making law and potentially turning 43 million Americans into persons who are potentially committing a felony because they're illegally possessing a short-barreled rifle. And of course, that's not what a pistol stock or a pistol brace does at all. It's something that was devised to assist in the use of a pistol by disabled persons, although I suppose that it might be valuable for somebody, who would have trouble handling the recoil from a pistol. So, for purposes of target shooting, for purposes of self-defense, this is something that's very, very reasonable. We don't have 43 million Americans going around using, pistol braces, in order to commit crimes. And, this is just really evinces sort of a hostility towards gun owners and a disregard for doing what they should do, and that is, if they thought that this was a good idea, they could go back to Congress and they could ask for this authorization and then defend it against any type of Second Amendment challenge. But they don't want to do that because, of course, Congress would say no.
You don't even have to bring a Second Amendment challenge on this because
You really don't.
You don't. The ATF redefined short-barreled rifle. They not to mention, and you mentioned this in your case, they violate the separation of powers. They violate the Administrative Procedures Act. They violate the non-delegation doctrine. They violate a law that says you have to be clear in your definitions. They're redefining stuff on the fly. It's really offensive because we actually have some use for the ATF, but it seems like they are nothing more than the gun control, Stasi, because we could use them dealing with the illegal guns that are being trafficked into the country across the southern border, or the illegal guns that are being moved into the dense inner cities of the United States. But that's not what they're not helping us out in that regard. They want to go after 43 million American gun owners who are doing nothing except maybe target shooting, and then using them as home self-defense because they can, or because they think they can. But absolutely, in your case, you point out very clearly that the ATF has zero authority to do this at all.
That's right. And so instead of reacting to crime that exists, what the ATF is doing here is they're creating criminals that do not exist.
Correct.
And who Congress never intended to make criminals. And all of this stuff that we talk about, separation of powers, and you went through the litany, you said non-delegation doctrine, Administrative Procedures Act, all of that stuff. really it distills down to this one essential fact of our constitutional structure, and that is Congress makes the law. The president and the bureaucrats that the president employs, and they administer the law, but they don't make it. They follow the rules that Congress sets for them. And if they don't like the rules, like anybody else, they can go back to Congress and they can ask for new rules to be made. But they didn't want to do this, and they didn't want to do it because they knew Congress would say no, and because this was some way for some bureaucrat to score a point. And as I said before, it doesn't really help with any real problem that is out there with respect to, the violence and the unlawful use of firearms. It just creates a whole new category of unlawful possession of firearms when there's no reason to do so.
And let's talk about what the penalty is. 10 years. You could do 10 years. Your life is ruined. You could do 10 years in federal prison if you are found illegally in possession of a short-barreled rifle. And yesterday it was just a gun with a pistol brace, but today instant felon. And if you don't register those firearms, isn't that interesting? This is also a backdoor gun registry. If you don't register those firearms, the ATF is going to be very magnanimous, and they're going to waive the $200 tax stamp. And I don't know what they're going to do about FBI background checks, fingerprinting, and all of that stuff, because typically if you are going to have a weapon that is classified under NFA, you have to do some backflips to get it, and you can't have it in your possession until you're cleared. I mean, the ATF hasn't even described how this is even going to work, given that technically you're not even supposed to be in possession of the thing until you pass a background check.
Right, so they're arrogating additional power to themselves, and you can say, "Well, look, we wouldn't seek a 10-year sentence against most people," and maybe that's true. But the problem is that that's cold comfort to somebody who has to live under the threat of that, and so it as I said, it's creating criminals, which is. That's not ATF's job. ATF is not supposed to create crime. Congress is supposed to create crimes if they think, that some particular conduct is warranting criminal punishment subject to what is permitted under the Constitution. So ATF is usurping its authority. It simply, doesn't have the necessary authorization to do this. And so, this has been a type of lawsuit that we've brought repeatedly. I mean, this really is of a piece with a lot of the COVID litigation we brought, where we said, look, the problem here is not even that you did something that we disagree with; it's that you didn't do it in the lawful way. And we've seen that again and again and again, where politicians they don't want to do things the right way. They don't want to go through the hard work of convincing our legislators that and then the thing you heard while the other party is in power and the other party controls the House of Representatives and they wouldn't do what they want. Well, you know what? If they won't do what you want, then you can't do it, because that's how our system
They do it
works.
though, Rick, and let me get to that in just a second,
Yes,
because they don't
do it.
care. That the lawyers for the United States government know damn well that this lawsuit that Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty has brought is solid. It is likely to win on its merits. Period. I mean, pick any of the arguments you're making in the suit, and as we have detailed, there are multiple arguments. Before I get to the problem with the rejection of the idea that anybody in power has to follow the law, in 2012, during the Obama administration, the ATF issued, I believe it was considered guidance, when folks were asking, is it okay for us to have these things? They don't turn our guns into short-barreled rifles, do they? Oh, no. And in 2017, the ATF issued updated guidance that said if you have a pistol brace and you shoulder it, the act of shouldering the pistol brace, which is tough, but can be done, does not make the gun at that moment a short-barreled rifle. So we've got two guidance documents from the ATF, and then all of a sudden they just turn around and say, never mind.
Right. They do it, and all of that is is just further evidence that this is something that Congress never intended. And here's the thing, and I know most of your listeners will probably see this for the foolish waste of time that it is. But let's say that you think pistol braces are the worst thing in the world and you wish that nobody had one. You still shouldn't support the president deciding unilaterally through his bureaucrats that this is a crime because when you endorse that principle, when you endorse the fact that the executive can do this, just wait, because one day there's going to be a president that you don't like, and they're going to do things that they're going to exercise that same authority because nobody unilaterally disarms themselves in this world. And so it's really important to stick to these processes that we've all agreed are going to govern the way in which we conduct our political life. Now, if they did that, then absolutely, Congress would never support criminalizing the ownership of a pistol brace. And you know what? It's because there's no reason to.
We need to educate people about the importance of the process of the rule of law and the rule of law itself, because we are not ruled by a king. We are supposed to be a self-governed people. We're supposed to be part of this process, and we trust that the rule of law is in place to protect our position in this, in ordering our own liberty. Thank you so much for coming on the program, Rick. It was wonderful to have you on the show, and thanks very much for what Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty is doing. And as I like to say, donate if you love what Will is doing at will-law.org. Thanks.
How it gets done.
Thank you. Exactly correct. That is how it gets done.